Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just wrapped up talking some NBA and the upcoming trade deadline. Now we're going to be moving on to some baseball and a topic that is pretty personal for me in the Boston Red Sox, who have been a very disappointing organization over the past handful of years. There's been a lot of criticism about the way that they have been running the organization, and I think that it is warranted. So we're going to be getting into a little bit the politics almost of how things have unraveled here in Boston. It's been a tough offseason for the Red Sox and Red Sox fans who were hoping that the team would be taking steps to the next level. It started early in the offseason. It was even late in the season where they made the announcement that they were going to be firing their president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom. Bloom was somebody that they brought in a few years ago to sort of do the little things and almost small market the Red Sox back into their way of winning after some really bad contracts were given out following the 2018 season. Some decisions were made. He was almost brought in to sort of front the front office's decision to not give Mookie Betts the contract extension and instead trade him. So Bloom got a lot of flack, I feel like, from Red Sox fans because fans seem to believe that he was the reason that this organization wasn't spending money. I was sort of more so in the camp of, I think it says more about the organization as a whole that they would go and they would bring in this guy from a small market team like the Rays were, and he really helped shape up the Rays and their farm system and everything. And they were sort of making the statement then that they were not going to be giving out really expensive payrolls and they were going to sort of be working within the margins. They gave out under Bloom just one big contract to Trevor Story, who has really struggled with injuries through his first couple seasons here in the Red Sox, and we haven't seen the value pay off so much just yet. But part of the thing with Bloom was building up the farm system after the Red Sox sort of depleted it in the Chris Sale trade and the other moves. Steve Pearce, who maybe not a big name to a lot of people, but did go on to win the 2018 World Series MVP award. They go out, they trade for these guys and depleted their system, and as a result, they were ranked 30th coming into Bloom's tenure with the Red Sox. Since then, he has really built it from the ground up. They are seen as a top 10, top 5 farm system now, based off of a lot of different baseball statistics like the Bleacher Reports of the world, their Baseball America. They are seen as a much better core now, which I would agree with. You can see it already, some falling into the pro leagues with Tristan Casas, how he's come up the ranks. You had Ceddanne Rafaela late in the year sort of start to make his mark in the outfield for them. And I didn't love the firing of Bloom because we were finally starting to get to see some of these pieces that he put together come into place for them. And I know that Casas wasn't even a Bloom draft pick, but he helped do more than just the drafting alone. It was sort of reworking some of the developmental strategies at the bottom, the analytics departments. I know that a lot of people sort of hate on the analytics, but the Red Sox were so outdated by the time that he came in that it really seemed to make a difference, and it has been somewhat paying off. And then they fire him before his guys even really get to display themselves. I think was a little bit dirty, and I think that again it was just a little bit of a front for this front office that doesn't want to spend money and wants people to point the finger at other places. So that's how the offseason started to kick off with the Red Sox, and comes out in November where they talk about the idea of going full throttle. That's an exact quote that the Red Sox chairman Tom Werner gave. And then later on. So that takes place in November. January 16th is the deadline for Red Sox season ticket holders to renew their memberships and their tickets for the upcoming season. January 19th, the Red Sox CEO at Winter Weekend said that they were going to have a lower payroll this season than they did last year. And then January 31st, this story comes out about how the Fenway Sports Group obviously includes John Henry and all of the front office guys for the Red Sox. They were investing in the PGA Tour, becoming a partner with them. I'm not quite sure what their stakes exactly are, but this was a $3 billion deal that the Fenway Sports Group was a part of. So it was basically a giant FU the way that this all sort of played out to Red Sox fans, pretending that you were going to be one thing, waiting until, financially speaking, they could guarantee more income for them, and then shedding the reality that things aren't going to be quite what we told you initially. And Werner's gone back. He's tried to sort of rework this full throttle quote and make it seem like it is the Red Sox fans who were sort of taking it out of context and were making a bigger deal out of it than you should have. It's like, well, you didn't know what full throttle really meant when you were saying it. That's on you, not the fans, for listening to what you said. So it's kind of been a disaster on that front. And Ken Rosenthal, a very well-renowned reporter for the MLB, he recently went on a podcast, the Foul Territory Show, to answer the question, are the Red Sox actually trying? And definitively, he said no. As the question was still being asked, he said no. He said, not trying the way they should be trying. That's because the Boston Red Sox are the Boston Red Sox. We're talking about, obviously, the city alone, the big market, but the Red Sox are one of the more historic franchises in the MLB, and in a sport where there's not a salary cap and it's so much on the individual organization to pay their staff and to sort of manufacture these teams, they have not been doing enough. Now, they've made a couple moves this offseason. They traded Chris Sale and Chris Sale and cash for the Atlanta's second baseman, Vaughn Grissom. Grissom is a very promising young player, so I actually did like this move. Second base is a position that the Red Sox have really been struggling to fill for a lot of these years, sort of with stopgap guys, the Christian Arroyos, Luis Arias last year they traded for at the deadline. So it hasn't been really, it's been the weakness in a very bad defense. Now, it's not obviously just on the second baseman. Rafael Devers was horrendous defensively at third base this season, but the defense is a very big part of the story about this Red Sox team and the way that they've put together these rosters. They've been among the worst in fielding percentages for a couple seasons now, so that was something they needed to address. Grissom struggled a little bit in the field when he played some shortstop last year, but at second base he was a lot more solid. That's where he's expected to be playing for the Red Sox this season, so ideally should be a good move. Again, very promising, but for an Atlanta Braves team that has so much talent and is championship focused, he sort of struggled to find playing time last year. So I think this was a trade that made sense in both directions, because Chris Sale, obviously Boston will love him for that 2018 playoffs run and that season as a whole, but since getting the contract extension following that year, he has very much struggled to stay healthy and actually pitch for the Red Sox. They send him to the Braves. Now, Sale looked the closest that he's been to, I wouldn't say vintage Sale. I think that we're past that point, but he was a lot better last year, but still dealing with some injuries, and I think that he is probably better off with the Braves, where he can sort of rest a little bit more, and the Red Sox can press this reset button and get off the contract. Again, I know that I've been critical of their lack of spending money. I didn't mind this move in particular, but this also leaves an opening at the starting pitcher position, and that was something that their new president of baseball operations, Craig Breslow addressed early in his time with the Red Sox has said, we need front end pitching. And they've done just about nothing to address that. In fact, they traded Chris Sale. They signed Lucas Giolito, who is somebody who has at least been available the past couple of years, is pretty much the best thing you can say about him. He has started in 63 games over the past 2 seasons, spent time with 3 different teams last year. He has a 4.89 ERA over the past 2 seasons, so he's been not very good. He has at least been available, and this is a Red Sox organization that last year they were struggling to even have any sort of starting pitcher rotation where they bring in Corey Kluber as their like acquisition to help start on the front line. He starts on opening day as Sale is still sort of working himself back, and by June Kluber was out of the rotation, and by July he was pretty much off the team as they sent him to the Phantom IL because he was just getting shelled all season long. And the former Cy Young winner, it's just clear that it's past his time. And this is something the Red Sox have done the past couple of years, is try and give out these 1-year contracts to these older pitchers. They did so with Rich Hill the year before, who was actually good, and he was good last season, but they didn't retain him because he became too expensive for them, which is just a ridiculous concept to me. And now they're sitting in a situation still needing starting pitchers because last year they were going with multiple bullpen days, a rotation through, and they were at least lucky enough to have a Nick Pivetta, who was a starting pitcher but to start the year, but ended up coming out of the bullpen, was actually better out of the bullpen for a lot of those stretches, and he was giving bulk innings where he was pitching a lot, but still not technically a bullpen day, and they were doing 2 of those per time through the rotation when it got to, midway through the season and on. And it was just not, it was fine. It was fun. Pivetta coming out of the bullpen, he was pretty electric, and, he's been a fiery guy for a while, but, it became really hard to stopgap this all the way through the course of the year. And now there's a situation where Jordan Montgomery, who just won a World Series with the Rangers after being traded halfway through last year, former Yankee, I might add, so it would give the Red Sox a little bit of extra juice if they had him and he was good for them. But he is, as Rosenthal put, he's basically just in Massachusetts right now, in Boston. I believe his wife works somewhere near the area. So he's essentially sitting in the Red Sox backyard, but there has been no traction whatsoever from the Red Sox of trying to pursue him, even though there's real interest from Montgomery himself of coming to the team. I think it would be a great addition to this Red Sox team, and they're just choosing to not spend the money. And it's very frustrating as a Red Sox fan watching the team that you do love operate like this. Like, it's tough love right now. I guess a little bit on the bright side here is that it sort of went under the radar this past weekend where the Red Sox brought in Theo Epstein on last Friday, February 2nd, to be a part of the Fenway Sports Group and help be a consultant for different things with the Red Sox. He was the GM when the Red Sox broke the curse of the Bambino in 2004. He was with them for the 2007 World Series. And he's been a very accomplished, well-renowned guy in the baseball world. He went to the Cubs in 2016 when they broke their 108-year drought, I believe it was, with a championship. And he spent the past couple years as a consultant to the MLB as a whole, trying to bring some excitement back into baseball. So he's very well accomplished, and they bring him in. The question is how much will he have a say in things? They brought in Craig Breslow as their president of operations. Epstein actually gave Breslow his first front office job with the Cubs in 2019 when he was still there. So maybe he'll have a say in things. This should ideally be a positive for the Red Sox, but there's just so much negativity going on that it seems like nobody in Boston actually even cares. And the thing is the Red Sox have had some solid teams the past couple years, but they have had just such a lack, even when they were legit good in 2021, a lack of care to invest in the team come trade deadlines and everything. And I just feel like, you're the Red Sox. You don't have to go out and throw the big bucks at everybody every offseason, but at least put out a competitive team, because you can make the playoffs, you can make the wild card game, and still have the city behind you. I think that honestly one of the best Red Sox moments of my life was in 2021 when they were a wild card team and they beat the Yankees, went on to the ALCS after beating a division rival Rays in a series, and they had the Astros on the ropes for a bit there. And they just have a refusal to even put that sort of effort into the organization now. And it's a shame. I think it's a shame for baseball as a whole, because yes, I obviously care because of personal bias, but I think that the league is always better when the Yankees and the Red Sox are good, and they finished 4th and 5th in their division this year. The Yankees went out and made moves. They trade for Juan Soto, and they're more of a money-spending team that can backfire at times, but at least they're trying to help their fan base, and the Red Sox are not. And it stinks a lot. So this is probably going to be, because I can't imagine they're going to be making any sort of moves. Maybe they do go get Montgomery, but I doubt it. But this is probably going to be the last time we talk about the Red Sox until baseball season comes around. So we will be moving on from this joke of a franchise, and they don't deserve to get the national attention. So, it is what it is. But that is all we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow at 2. Thank you to the GSMC Podcast Network for allowing us to have this show. And thank you all for listening. So, see you then.